Hello traders and welcome to the Trading Fanatic channel. I'm really excited to have you here, and today I have a very special guest, a very good friend of mine and also my own psychology coach. This is Mr. Pat Bailouni. So welcome, Pat. It's really great to have you on the channel and on this interview. So I would like to give you a little chance to introduce yourself first. Let us know what you do. What do you specialize in?
Perfect. First and foremost, thank you so much for having me on board, Ilya. I'm really excited to run through what we have to share today. But yeah, like you mentioned, I work as a trading mindset and performance coach. I run an education and performance coaching business, which is called Master Your Trading Mindset. And we effectively help traders break through the psychological patterns that hold them back from consistency and funding. And as you know, we give them the tools, the teachings, the understandings, to be able to break through these challenges and to be ultimately help them accomplish their trading goals. Now, a little bit about me, I think adding some context here will be useful to when we go and talk about what we're going to talk about. Sure. I've been trading myself for the last 6 years, and it was about year 1, year 2 in that journey where I had my own personal experience of recognizing how important psychology and mindset is in trading. I went through a significant drawdown on investor capital, and it impacted not only my trading, but also impacted all areas of life. And that was really a wake-up call to me that trading is much more than technicals. It's much more than technical analysis. There's a psychological component there that all great traders need to master if they want to sustain the success in the markets. And I went off and started to read a lot of books, and I studied under some great mentors for a few years. I did some advanced studies, especially with Dr. John Demartini. His teachings were quite impactful in my life. I know they were in yours as well, earlier. And I went back, and after working with hundreds of clients, after implementing a little of my own trading experience, I implemented and amalgamated all these things I learned. And I ultimately wanted to create my own set of principles, my own education, my own tools to help traders break through any mindset challenges they had and to accomplish the goals they wanted to accomplish. And that's what I do now. And it's a very fulfilling role for me because I get to see traders literally transform their lives and break through to some pretty cool results as well. And I know we're going to talk about a few different topics here today, which I think will be very, very impactful.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you for that, Pat. And really, it's been really insightful because, as you said, like trading is not only technicals. And usually for beginner traders, they just rolling into the technicals, buy courses, study strategies, test them out, and then no success. And I know people like that have been trading for 4 to 5 to 6 years and still struggle, but they never recognize that the problem is actually within them. It's within their own thinking, within their own mindset. So I think we should get into it. So pretty much, let me actually give you the idea of what my idea actually is for the interview. I would like to put ourselves in the shoes of struggling traders. Right? Traders that experience all those emotions, that have very specific trading problems. So then we can potentially think of ways on how they can actually solve this. Does that sound cool? Good.
That sounds perfect. And you know what? It's probably very easy for me to do that because, 5-6 years ago, that's exactly where I was, right?
You've been there.
So I'll be going back there and giving some nice insights on that.
Exactly. All right. So before we actually jump into the specific problems, I'm curious about something. So, each trader is very unique. We have unique problems on our own. Some are fearful, other traders are very greedy. Some are lacking any sort of confidence, while others are really confident, right? So pretty much when you start trading, you get exposed to all of those inner flaws, right? You get to understand more about yourself. And then you're like, oh, I didn't know this thing even existed before. I didn't know I was so competitive, or I didn't know I was so fearful. I'm right now trying to click a button, but I can't. Why is this, right? So, Pat, what makes each trader so unique? Like, do life circumstances or past experience play a role with that? And how can a trader later actually identifying those inner flaws?
Yep, that's a really great question. And I think very few traders ask this question, yet it's usually an underlying thing that runs their decision making. And let me explain what I mean by that. Every trader, every human being lives moment by moment by a set of priorities, things they perceive as most important in their life. And people's lives demonstrate what's most important to them. So if, traders dedicate hours to developing a strategy, learning and developing that strategy, obviously strategy development is very important to them. I know for me, those components are important. Going off and learning is important to me. Going to the gym is important to me. Spending time with friends and family is important to me. All those types of things, right? My life actually demonstrates that. Now, those values, in a sense, those priorities are determined based on what we perceive as most missing in our life. So we have certain perceptions of lack or things we perceive are missing in our life. And we're going to have priorities to go off and fulfill those voids in our life. So for example, if we perceive money missing or financial freedom missing, or, we didn't have the opportunity to go off and do what we wanted to do, or we didn't have that financial security, we're going to have a high priority on fulfilling that void in our life, because that's very important to us. Yeah. We don't go off and pursue things that we don't perceive are missing, right? We only pursue things that we perceive are missing. We perceive a relationship missing, we're going to pursue that. Money missing, we're going to pursue that, right? Now, so every trader is independent and unique in the sense of their own perceptions of what they perceive as missing in their life. So therefore, every single trader is going to have a slightly different and a unique set of priorities that they're going off and pursuing. Now, being able to understand what those are and get clear on those gives you a lot of power as a trader, because it helps you understand how you're internally wired. And you can then structure things in your life to ensure you have motivation and discipline. I guarantee every issue that a trader has with motivation, with discipline and focus comes from the fact that they're unaware of what their true priorities are, and they're trying to pursue things that aren't truly important to them. And, we've talked about this before, Ilya. It's like, if it's not directly in your perception linked to what's most important, so you can go off and link that. You can make the connection in your perception. You can change your perception to ensure that you're aligned. The other component here that makes traders unique is their perceptions of events in their life. So, for example, if a trader, when they were younger, they played a lot of sport, or they're in, whatever it may be, and they had certain experiences after they lost where they got criticized, or they had, their coach or their parents were really hard on them, and they learned in their mind to associate a lot of pain to losing, that's then going to impact their trading, because in their mind, they see losing as bad, negative, pain, and their biochemistry is going to follow accordingly. They're going to have a lot of the pain substances released, and they're going to label that a negative event. So too, if they associate a lot of pleasure to winning, whenever they win in the markets, they're going to have the dopamine, they're going to have the oxytocin, they're going to feel really good after they win. Now, all these events from childhood until now, right? Every single event is going to be stored. Every single incomplete event is going to be stored in our subconscious mind. And we're going to store these things as losing is bad, winning is good, for the example before. And that's going to impact our trading, because now we're going to have a negative connotation to losing. We're going to try and avoid losing. We're going to have a positive association with winning. We're going to try and seek after winning. And as we're probably going to discuss later on in this interview, a lot of the times it's that deep-seated programming that impacts traders' ability to be consistent. So it's very much a lot about being aware of your experiences in life, being aware of your associations in life, being aware of the subconscious programming you have, and then also being aware of how you can manage that and how you can put the tools in place to go in and be able to deal with that. So you're not run by your subconscious mind, but you're run consciously based on your processes and based on your trading plan. And ultimately, that's a lot of the work I help traders do, in programs like the 12-week challenge and performance coaching. That's ultimately what we're helping traders do: identify that subconsciously stored data, give them the mental models, the tools to be able to manage that, deal with that, so they can make objective, real decisions as traders and ultimately achieve consistency in funding.
Yeah. Great. Very nice. Yeah. As you said, the thing that really struck me is that all of those things are subconscious. So you're not really aware of them, and they're just driving you, but you're not aware. So can you maybe briefly, is there a way that we can start becoming more aware of those subconscious impulses driving us?
Yep. And one additional thing, there's one other thing to your question before that I would love to touch on. I don't necessarily think they're flaws. I don't think that just because traders have that subconsciously stored data, it's not a bad thing. It's not a flaw. It's who that trader is, and it's just their it's their journey in a sense to be able to go off and learn those lessons. And I think that's why continuing to learn, continuing to work with a mindset or performance coach, continuing to be aware of yourself and doing your own journaling and stuff like that is so crucial, because it's an ongoing journey, right? It's an ongoing journey of refinement. But to answer your question, one of the most powerful ways I know to be able to access the subconscious is through quality questions. And we're going to talk more about this later in this interview, I'm sure. But the unconscious is very much just the opposite of whatever you're perceiving in that moment.
Yeah.
So I know you're a big fan of journaling, Ilya. And one thing I always challenge traders to do is think of the other side. It's like, if you take a loss in the market, the conscious mind is seeing the negative, it's seeing the pain, right? That's why you're labeling it a negative experience, because you're comparing it to the subconsciously stored data from childhood of when you lost that race, you got criticized by your family and friends. That's why the loss as a trader is so painful.
Yeah.
That is what you're conscious of in that moment, right? A quality question in that moment would be, okay, you took that loss in that moment. What were the benefits to you of that loss? What did you gain? How did that serve you as a trader? And it's about making yourself aware of the other side of that event, which is the unconscious, and not making anything up, just having a look, because the answer is there in your unconscious. You just have to look. And the more and more you do that, you start to realize that this loss isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's just my bias that's blocking me from seeing the other side. The moment I bring the unconscious to my conscious awareness and I see both sides of it, I realize that a loss is just an event, and I chose to interpret it initially as negative, right? Because every single trader has been through a situation where when they're in a drawdown, they're thinking that drawdown is a terrible thing. But then 6 months later, they look back on that drawdown and they're grateful for that drawdown, because that's ultimately where they got the greatest growth from. They made refinements. They fixed their trading plans. They did all these types of things. The losses and the negative helps us grow. And I think the quicker you can realize that in the moment, make yourself aware of the unconscious, you do a lot of things. You reduce stress, you increase performance, you transcend the boom and bust cycle, you gain consistency as a trader. It's a very, very powerful thing to be able to do.
Exactly. And as you said, like, the key is to actually identify this as soon as possible, because if you like retain this information and you go and you go and you go and you keep losing, but if you don't actually change your perception of the losses, then you just keep losing and you keep going down on the spiral. So again, ask quality questions. If you take a loss, what's good about this loss? What did I learn? What did I do to make me better? Because as you said, Pat, during challenges, this is when we grow. In order to grow, we need challenge. And I think
Yep. And another point on that, I love what you said there, Ilya, is whenever you take a loss as a trader, you can see how that loss is actually helping you accomplish your overall goal as a trader in your mind. Then you become invincible in a sense. And you realize that irrespective of whether I win or whether I lose, I'm going to use this to my advantage to ensure I grow and progress as a trader. That's me as a trader who is on their pathway to so-called success, because every trader is going to go through both win and loss. I think sometimes traders have a fantasy that they're only going to win in the market. They're only going to be making profit. And the reality of the situation is that we're both going to win and lose. We're going to have up days, we're going to have down days, but both are essential for our growth. So the more you can see that the loss is actually helping you accomplish your mission in life, you become more resilient as a trader, and you're more likely to stick with it long enough. And as a result, you're more likely to accomplish your goals as a trader as well.
Beautiful. Yeah, very insightful. Okay. Let's touch right now on something that you actually mentioned a bit before. You named it the boom and bust cycle. So I would like to speak more about that. And of course, we know that the market is mainly driven by greed and fear. So this is the two most common emotions that we have in the market. And pretty much this is how the market drives. And a trader can either be greedy or fearful. Of course, there are many other emotions that fall under this category. Like we have anger, hesitation, FOMO, and all of that stuff. But on a weekly and daily basis, traders go through the cycle. You might come in on Monday, you might like hit a big winning trade and you're like, oh yes, I'm gonna crush this week, right? Then you go into euphoria. You buff yourself up. I'm going to really crush this week. Tuesday and Wednesday, you lose. Oh man, I'm so bad. I need to do something. Then you win a little bit. Okay, now I'm good, right? So Pat, this cycle, how do we actually balance ourselves and how do we transcend this cycle of boom and bust?
Yeah, it's a great question. I became fascinated with this the first time I read Mark Douglas's work where he talked about the boom bust cycle. And it was something I was facing at the time as well as a trader. So I wanted to go off and find a solution to this. And I believe I have found a solution to it. And I'm going to share what that solution is. Now, Warren Buffett said it best when he said, don't expect to manage your money unless you can manage your emotions. And what's interesting is he also said that when others are fearful, when others are greedy, you need to be fearful.
Yeah.
And only consider being greedy when others are fearful, right? So what that's showing me is that a master like Warren Buffett, he's aware of the other side of the equation, right?
Yeah.
He's aware of both sides, right? And I guess you could call the amateur trader is only aware of one side. They're so polarized. When it's negative, they're fearful. When it's positive, they're greedy, and they're run by that, instinct to avoid pain and that impulse to seek pleasure. Whereas Warren Buffett is always seeing the other side of the equation as well. This is what we talked about with the unconscious before. But you explained it very well. What the boom and bust cycle is doing a win, taking a win and thinking you're doing really well and puffing yourself up into pride. And what happens when you get so far into pride is you start becoming complacent with your trading plan, right? Whenever we think we're better than the market and we push ourselves above the market, we then start talking down on the market and we project our time, our price, the things we want because we think we're invincible relative to the market. Right? We say Eurodollar has to sell off. Eurodollar has to sell off this quickly. And we start imposing these expectations on the market because we've puffed ourselves into a state of pride. But the market's never wrong ultimately. So the more we project onto the market, we're going to get humbled and we're going to start taking losses. And then what happens eventually, if we keep taking losses, is we go into a state of shame, we go into fear, right? And now we're below the market. When the market presents opportunities, we're too fearful to act. Right?
Yeah.
So the boom and bust cycle, what it is we start taking wins, we go into pride. We start projecting onto the market, we start taking lower quality setups in our plan, we start becoming complacent and we stop doing the things that got us there in the first place. And then we start taking losses, right? We go past the point of equilibrium into fear and we get so fearful that we go back and we make refinements to our plan. We start only taking the high probability setups and then we start getting some more wins on the board, right? And then we go into pride again and the cycle repeats. So the way to transcend the boom and bust cycle is, because think about it, the boom and bust cycle is a symptom of going into pride when you win and going into shame when you lose. If we go to talk about what we talked about before, about bringing the unconscious into the equation, if every time you take a win, you then go and find the drawbacks, the risks and disservices to taking that win, and you take that win off the pedestal, and you learn to govern yourself and realize that winning has both advantage and disadvantage. And you see that simultaneously in the moment, right? You don't get elated when you win, which means you're not subject to those things like becoming complacent, taking low quality setups in your plan. And then when you take losses and go into shame, you go and find the benefits and services to those losses, right? You're not susceptible to the fear because you recognize that that loss actually helps you on your journey to becoming a successful trader.
Exactly.
So transcending the boom and bust cycle is about learning to self-govern, learning to find the benefits when you lose, and learning to find the drawbacks when you win, so you can get back to a state of equilibrium and execute on your trading plan. Because if you're in pride, you're going to be greedy and you're going to project onto the market. You're not going to stick to your trading plan. You're going to talk down on the market. If you're in shame, in fear, you're not going to execute when the market presents opportunities. But if you're in a state of equilibrium, you're going to listen to what the market's communicating to you, price over time, and you're going to execute when it aligns with your trading plan. And that's ultimately where you trade consistently and most sustainably. Now, does that mean traders will never get fearful when they lose? No. Does that mean traders will never get greedy when they win? No, right? But it's about learning to be aware of those emotions and use the process I talked about before to manage them, and shortening the amount of time it takes for you to take a loss and create a blank slate, or take a win and create a blank slate and get back to that state of equilibrium. So I hope that makes sense. But I guarantee I've seen it over and over. I talk about it in the 12-week challenge. I do it with my one-on-one performance coaching guys. Getting back to that state of equilibrium after you win and after you lose is the way you transcend the boom and bust cycle and get consistent results, because you're put in a position to just execute on your trading plan.
Exactly.
And you let your edge play out.
Exactly. And one more little detail, like for the traders that might think it's going to happen immediately, it's an ongoing process. Because if you actually imagine the boom and bust, it's like a line, and then you have all of those swings above the line. So with work, those swings are just going to decrease until they actually even out. So it's not going to happen like, boom, you're good. For me personally, it happens very slowly, and it still does. Like when I still take a loss, I'm like, man, a loss, I don't want it. But then immediately the impulse or the shame does not go too deep. I balance myself quickly and I'm back at equilibrium, and then I'm ready to strike again. But still, as you said, our trader is never going to be greedy or never fearful. No, it's a fantasy. It's something that you cannot achieve. So this is
but like you said earlier, you can dampen the emotional response to wins and losses.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily think traders should say, all right, I need to be 100% unemotional after this win, after this loss.
No. It's
like you said, it's a fantasy. It's not something you're going to do as a human being, right? It's about mitigating the swing. It's about because, and the other thing here is the more addicted you are to winning, the more pleasure you associate with winning, and the more happy you get when you win, the more painful losing is going to be, because they're pairs of opposites in your mind. If you associate a lot of pleasure to winning, then you're going to associate a lot of pain simultaneously to its opposite, which is losing. So learning to dampen both those polarities there helps you become more process-based as a trader. It's so key. It's, in my opinion, the cornerstone to mastering your mindset as a trader.
Absolutely. Yeah. All right. This has been great. So let's actually start putting ourselves in the shoes of traders. So again, as I said, we have the greedy and the fearful traders. So let's actually start with the fearful one. So again, this is the trader that hesitates to execute a trade. This is the traders that feel a loss so much that they just freeze before clicking the button, right? They're overthinking before taking a trade. They're just stressing out. They close their trades prematurely. They're afraid to actually let it run. And in fact, if we just put this like on top of everything, they just fear failure. So they fear failing, or they fear actually the market being better than them. So they're ashamed of it. So Pat, where do those fearful emotions come from, and how can actually a fearful trader battle with those fearful emotions? So we're focusing on fear now.
Well, I'm going to say something that may be a little bit shocking to people, but our fear of losing actually comes directly from our addiction to success. Right? It's every single trader, every single human being is going to both win and lose in their life. They're going to be labeled both successful and failure in their life. As a human being, you're going to have both sides. And there are so many people trying to get rid of half their life, trying to get rid of all the negative in their life and just be the positive side, which is impossible, right? So the more addicted you are to success, the more painful losing is going to be. And it's like what I talked about before. It's about learning to dampen the oscillations. And that doesn't mean you shouldn't strive for success. Doesn't mean you shouldn't strive for accomplishment. But it's about recognizing that you're going to have both sides of the equation. You're going to have both pain and pleasure. You're going to have both support and challenge. And it's about embracing both sides of the equation when you go off and accomplish great things. Now, another thing that I think is super, super important when we talk about both fear and greed is a few things. First and foremost, having a clear process-based trading plan, right? I classify myself as more as a trading performance mindset coach. I don't really do much work with clients on creating an actual strategy, but what I preach over and over is you need to have a crystal clear trading plan. You need to have an edge that's so clearly defined and laid out and so process driven that there isn't any hesitation in your process. Doing that alone will help with the emotions. Because I guarantee a lot of the fear, a lot of the greed come from not being 100% certain in that moment of what your actual decision is going to be. So by going in there and getting clear on your entries, getting clear on those last little things you need to see in the market before you place the entry, getting clear on your management, getting clear on your risk, putting into a trading plan, printing it out, having it in front of you and reading it, and just ingraining that into your mind and seeing the things play out over and over is going to help with your emotions. It's going to help mitigate the fear because you know your edge relative to what you back tested in the past. There's an edge there. And if you execute on that over and over, it's going to help with the fear. The other thing that I found really helps, and we both have a background in sport, right, is pre-trading rituals and routines. I know whenever I went and played sport, there was always a routine, there was always a ritual that I did to prepare. And yes, that may be a physical thing to prep my body physically so I don't get injured, but I guarantee you it did something psychologically for me, getting me in the zone as well.
Exactly.
And I think traders need to be treating trading like a business, need to be treating it like professional athletes, and have such a high standard of themselves that they do those pre-trading routines and they do those pre-trade rituals every time. And that will also help mitigate the fear and the greed because you're priming your mind to be in a state to be able to execute like a professional. And putting yourself into that state is going to help mitigate the emotions, dampen the amygdala, and help turn online your prefrontal cortex, which is going to be where you make the better decisions from anyway. So it'd be those few things. Recognize that first and foremost, just to summarize here, if you're so scared of losing, you're comparing it to a fantasy of winning, right? And just recognize that. And recognize that even when you win, you're going to have both advantage and disadvantage. There's going to be both pain and pleasure to winning, no matter what you do. And there's also pleasure to losing as well, right? It's about what we talked about before. It's finding the drawbacks of losing, finding the benefits of losing, finding the drawbacks of winning. So you can see that both outcomes have both pain and pleasure involved with them. And that helps dampen the being scared of losing and being addicted to winning, helps dampen things so you can stick to your processes and your plan. Then get crystal clear in your trading plan. It has to be process-based. I know a lot of traders, more advanced traders, who use trading intuition, but I guarantee you that they didn't get to that point until they had a clear foundation of process. I think you need to have clear foundations and processes in place to allow your intuition to actually get involved in the market. And then finally, look to create pre-trading routines and rituals because they will be impactful in the way you execute in the markets.
Exactly. Very insightful. And in fact, about the trading routines, I was actually speaking to my guys on the webinar last Thursday, and I was like, this is real. This is real stuff. You're like competing against all of those guys. You cannot just wake up in the morning, grab a coffee and just sit and trade and make money. No, I just said it's like a performance. It's a sport. It's one of the hardest businesses out there. So again, what makes you better than the others? What gives you an edge? And I just said, of course, trading plan, but of course you have to prime yourself up. You got to wake up a little bit early, go outside, jog, journal a little bit, get your mind working, as you said. So very insightful few things. Hopefully, guys, you're taking notes right there because all of those little action steps, all of those little tweaks are going to have an exponential return.
They add up. Yep, they really do. Yep.
Beautiful. All right, well, we covered the fearful trader, and I kind of get the feeling that the greedy is just going to be the opposite. But let's, of course, cover it because it's slightly bit different. I found that, again, fearful traders have much different characteristics than the greedy one, right? So we have the greedy trader. He wants to make it right now. Right now, I want to be a millionaire. Right now, I want to get funded. Right now, I want to trade, right? They don't have control over themselves. They snap out and they just take all of those trades, and just at the end of the day, they're like, what? Did I do this? How come I took all of those trades? This shouldn't be me, right? They usually cannot stop trading after a few losses. They want to make that money back, right? They have to finish as a winner, right? And pretty much they are the traders that cannot follow a plan. I got this question a lot, like I cannot follow my trading plan. I'm not disciplined. I just keep taking trades. I keep losing. I have periods when I'm doing good. And then again, we have the boom and bust cycle. They have periods when they're doing great. They're following their plan. And then, as you said, they become complacent with their plan. And then they start losing. And usually the greedy one is going to lose big, right? This is usually what happens. And then they're back into that fearful state. But if you're greedy, they usually tend to bounce quicker just to later fall back down again, right? So Pat, what are your thoughts on the greedy traders? Where does actually greed come from, and what is the solution?
Okay, first and foremost, to the traders who can't stick to their trading or perceive themselves not being able to stick to their trading plan, from my perspective, from what I've seen with hundreds of clients, there's some level of uncertainty with the current trading plan you have. You have to think about it this way. If you're 100% certain of where you currently are in life, if you're 100% certain of where you would love to get to, and you're 100% certain that your trading plan is going to help you get from where you are to where you would love to get to, then there's no need to look outside what you currently have. The looking outside of what you currently have and not sticking to your trading plan, in other words, comes from being uncertain in one of those three components, usually the trading plan, right? Mm-hmm. It usually comes from traders not being 100% certain in what they've written down on the trading plan, sometimes because their trading mentor, their trading coach told them how to do it. They just copied it down. They don't really believe in it 100%. It's not really aligned to their personality. So they don't stick to it 100%. They then take trades that aren't aligned with that. So taking trades that aren't aligned with your trading plan is a symptom of not actually being certain in your trading plan from the start. And I would really address that and confront that and ask, is this congruent with my personality? If not, how can I make refinements to ensure it is? And go back to the trading plan, refine that strategy, because that will help with the psychology a lot. Mm. Now, in terms of a greedy trader, there was a really key distinction that I actually made recently as a performance coach. There's a very big difference between our reality, what we create in our head, and actuality, what's actually out there. So, yeah. And I saw this most common with traders who experience very painful losses, right? It wasn't actually the losing of the percentage or the dollar amount that really mattered, because relative to their overall account size, it wasn't that much. It was usually like 1%. But the thing that actually was extremely painful from taking those losses was, prior to that trader getting involved in that position, they imposed in their mind all these unrealistic expectations and fantasies onto that position. Yeah. They said that Eurodollar looks like it's going to sell off. In their mind, they say, all right, that's going to be the thing that gets me my FTMO account. That's the thing that's going to get me, or the funded account. That's the thing that's going to get me the recognition from my family and friends. That's the thing that's going to get me that new watch. And they're associating all these unrealistic expectations and fantasies to that position in their mind. It has no basis in actuality. It's something they fabricate in their own mind. And that's what leads to the painful loss. True. Because they lose those fantasies and unrealistic expectations. Exactly. It's no different with greed, in my opinion. What I've seen is that the greed isn't actually created in actuality from the market. It's created from the fantasies and unrealistic expectations that we project onto the market. Exactly. So being acutely aware of what expectations you're imposing on the market, or what outcomes you're expecting from the market, because ultimately the market owes nobody anything. And we really need to have realistic expectations onto the market and ourselves, and recognize that the only thing we can really expect from the market is if we have an edge that we have created from previously stored data from back testing, and we consistently execute on that over a long period of time, we can expect an outcome from that. We can expect an edge from that. But that doesn't mean we're going to win on individual trades. That doesn't mean we're going to maybe make the exact amount that we made last year, but at least we know we have an edge based on previous data in the market. And it's all about having realistic expectations in the market. That is, in my opinion, the solution to overcoming greed, is having realistic expectations on yourself and on the market, and not imposing fantasies or unrealistic expectations onto the market in your mind, because they don't actually have any basis in actuality. They're fabricated in our mind. And that's what leads to the greed. Exactly. And that's also what leads to the very painful losses as well. Like I said before, it's the addiction to those fantasies. It's the addiction to that success, that one-sided success, that actually creates the fear of failure. It actually creates the pain of failure, because we lose all those fabrications that we create in our mind.
Mm-hmm. Very important thing that you touched on. It's about language, which is something I just briefly want to touch on. As you said, the euro has to sell off. It has to do this, and you just get married to this outcome. And this is also why my videos in my weekly outlooks, I always use wordings like potentially, maybe, could be. And sometimes I get comments like, yeah, I just got it once, but it was very funny because a person was like, yeah, you're only maybe, could be. And I'm like, well, it could be. I don't know what's going to happen, right? I don't have any expectations. I'm just playing different outcomes. And if the edge presents, I strike. If I lose, cool. Then you adapt again. So watch your language. If you're using words like has to, must, this will sell off from here, you're, as you said, Pat, you're just imposing onto the market. You're telling it what to do, and it's going to slap you. So watch out. Watch out.
Very well said, Ilya. Very well said.
All right. You also mentioned this one, but let's actually dive a little bit deeper into it. You know, funding challenges with all the online prop firms that are available right now. And we have everybody being obsessed with those, right? I do like them. But I'm not a huge fan of them because I think they pose a threat to traders' mindset, because there are traders that are, for example, not ready yet, and they also don't have the capital, and they don't have the long-term mindset. So this can actually come back to the greedy trader. I work also with clients, and I sometimes make them go through a compounding calculator. So if you have right now like 1,000 or 5,000 euros to deposit, and if you make just 1% a day, you're going to be amazed by after 3 months, you're going to get a funded account just by making 1% a day, which I think all of us can, right? But with fundings, you pay whatever it is and you get like 100,000 or more, and traders are like, yes, I want this. They try to force it even without being ready. They tend just throwing their money away at challenges. Of course, this is how those companies are profitable, but sometimes they also get lucky. They can pass the challenge, and I've seen this many times. They pass it and then the next week, no account, right? So they really want to make it right now. And yeah, this I think introduces new fears as well. You start like looking down upon yourself, or maybe you enter into that casino mindset where you're just like trying to play those challenges and try to get it right. So Pat, let's speak a little bit about those challenges. What are your thoughts on them, and what would you advise a trader that actually wants to get funded?
Yeah, I've had the opportunity to work with consult for prop firms. I've had the opportunity to work with trading education companies. I've had the opportunity to work with a spectrum of traders. So I think I'm in a very fortunate position to have seen this whole question from multiple different angles. And there's one consistent thing that I would love to share in prop firms. And I'm going to make a statement here that being a funded trader cannot be the end goal. It can't be your end goal as a trader. Yeah. I say to traders that funding is a stepping stone in your trading journey. I think funding companies are great in the fact that they give you an opportunity to trade larger amounts of capital for quite minimized risk, quite a bit of minimized risk, right? But you're right, you can't rush into it, because I've also seen traders who get in the gambling mentality and they constantly buy new trials and new challenges when they're not actually ready. They don't have the foundations, they don't have the trading plan, they don't have the mindset, they don't have those components in place. So funding can't be the end goal. It has to be a stepping stone on your journey of your overall trading journey. And the reason I'm so adamant on this is because sometimes traders, think about it, if you have funding as your end goal, that's here. There's a brick wall here. There's nothing beyond that. And traders are so infatuated and adamant on getting funded that that's the furthest they can see, and there's nothing beyond that. And let's say they do get funded, what ends up happening is they now lose all their motivation and drive to continue to succeed as a trader, because their end goal has been accomplished in their minds. They've got nothing beyond that. And that's a big reason why they end up losing the funding accounts. Because step one is actually getting funded. Step two is then holding on to that funding and continuing to retain that and scale that. And those numbers aren't very good either. But I guarantee you one thing that would significantly improve the likelihood of getting funded and continuing to scale that funding is expanding your vision. So funding's here, expanding your vision and recognizing that, you know, I'm playing a 10-year journey as a trader. Yeah. I then want to use my trading to create some sort of philanthropy and provide for other people. I want to use my trading to free up my time so I can go off and create a business and serve other people. Or I want to use my profits from my trading to go off and impact certain people or my family or create something. And when you have a bigger vision for yourself, think about it, then funding is just this little stepping stone along the way. And you may then go and get 3 funding accounts from one company, and then go to another one and get another 3, and then get another 3. But it's all a tool in your overall journey of what your mission is as a trader. But traders who don't have this and they're so focused, I just want to get funded, don't end up getting funded first and foremost. But then if they do, they have a very high probability, if they're lucky and they do, they have a very high probability of actually losing that funding because they're so stressed and fearful of losing it when they're trading it. And they have an unconscious motive to get rid of it because they don't want to live in stress and fear. So it's all about your perspective of funding and where it fits into your overall master plan in life. And I'm a big believer that funding can't be the end goal. It has to be a stepping stone. I think it's a great tool. I think it's a great opportunity, but create a trading plan first, learn to manage your mindset. You know, I saw that and I created a 12-week challenge for that exact reason, Ilya. I saw traders coming out of trading education companies that had a good strategy, but they didn't have the mindset, they didn't have the routine, they didn't necessarily have the trading plan, they didn't have the tools to mitigate, you know, the risks and all that type of stuff. So I created the 12-week challenges, 12 steps to get you from those who have a trading strategy to now getting funded, right? That's why I created it, because I saw what you saw there and I wanted to create a solution to help traders make sure they get funded with a good trading strategy. But you have to have a solid trading plan. You have to know how to manage and mitigate your emotions like we talked about before. And you have to learn to take funding off the pedestal, expand your mission and vision for yourself and for your trading and for your life. And by doing each of those things, you increase the probability of achieving the funding, holding on to and continue to scale that funding as well.
Exactly. Right. Yeah. Those are some great tips. As you said, really resonate with what I also think. So thanks for that, Pat, for confirming. So again, hopefully guys, you're taking notes. Just again, the actual state of calling yourself, I'm a funded trader. And okay, so what? But they're like seeking this status, which again, I think it's, as you said, just like the final goal. And then you hit that status and okay.
Yep, that sparked a really great thought, Ilya. There was a tennis player, a famous tennis player. I can't remember what his name was a while ago. And he told his coach, I want to be the best tennis player in the world. And his coach's response was, and then what?
And then what?
Yeah. And I think that's such a brilliant response, not for the fact that you're not grateful that you're the best in the world, but you also have to recognize that you want to plan past each of your goals. And you want to have such a big mission and vision for yourself that you don't have the opportunity to call yourself successful.
Yeah.
You're grateful for your accomplishments. You're grateful for the opportunities you had that day, but you're on to the next challenge. You have to pursue the next inspiring challenge to you. So I would be, if a trader comes up to me and says, I want to be a funded trader, the first thing I would say back to them is, and then what? What's next after? Not to be cynical, but to communicate to them that I actually believe you're going to become a funded trader. Seriously, but what are you going to do with that? What's your plan beyond that?
Exactly.
It's the traders who have a plan beyond that increase the probability of getting funded and holding on to that funding in the long run. That's what I've seen working with hundreds of clients, consulting for prop firms, and working with education companies. It's so obvious from the perspective I'm at and seeing with all those different opportunities I get. I hope people really implement that, and I guarantee it'll make a difference.
Beautiful. All right, Pat, I want to ask you something as a wrap up. So you are extremely experienced, very knowledgeable in a lot of areas of life, but especially in trading, mindset, psychology, coaching as well. So if I'm to ask you, if you're to sum up all of your work and all of your experience throughout the years, what are the biggest key tips and action steps that you can actually advise the trader to take right now to to take him closer to his trading goals or his goals in total?
Yeah, well, there's a lot, Ilya. We're gonna need it. We're gonna need a lot more time. There's something that popped into mind. Whenever I think of achievement, I think of a 3-letter acronym called AIM. 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 And AIM stands for awareness, intention, and momentum. Whenever you have a goal that you want to accomplish, the first thing I always check is, do I have a clear awareness of my priorities right now? Do I have a clear awareness of what's most important to me right now? If it's yes, great. I go into the I. What's my clear intention? What's the goal I actually want to achieve? And am I pursuing a goal or am I pursuing a fantasy? Do I recognize this goal has both pleasure and pain? If I don't, it's a fantasy. So what are the pains and pleasures I'm going to experience on the journey of accomplishing this goal? And I get clear on the ever finer detail. And then finally ask myself, what's the highest priority actions I can do every single day to build momentum to accomplishing this intention? So I have awareness of my priorities right now. I have a clear idea of my intention and my goal, and I'm super clear on the high priority actions every day to help me build momentum towards accomplishing that goal.
Exactly.
Now, if you're looking at yourself and your life demonstrates that there's an incongruence with your priorities and your goals, that's okay, but it's about linking now. It's about getting the action steps that you're going to do on a daily basis and linking that to what is most important to you right now. I'll give you an example. I recently worked with a trader who is a father, and he has a very, very high priority on looking after his kids. And that's great. But he also has goals to be a successful trader.
Yeah.
So we went in there and we made links between how does you going off and doing the action steps of becoming a successful trader, how does it actually help you become a better dad?
Yep.
And how does it help with your relationship with your kid? And we went in there and we made the connections in his mind. So in his mind, he knows every time he's going off and trading, he's actually developing his fatherhood, so to speak, and vice versa. Every time you're spending time with your kid, how is that helping you become a better trader? And the moment you make those links in your mind, you really start to build some strong momentum because you're congruent with what your life demonstrates is most important. And you're building momentum every day and you become a force to be reckoned with. And I really think that if people had a greater awareness of what their life truly demonstrates is most important, by just looking, what do their actions demonstrate is most important to them? What do they do spontaneously every day? And they're getting more congruent with that by linking the action steps of the goal they want to accomplish to what is most important to them. They significantly increase the probability of achieving the goals they set. And I know a lot of people watching this probably have very audacious goals, which I think is great. But it's about grounding those, getting high priority actions in place and linking those high priority actions to what your life demonstrates is most important. That's where you set a clear aim. That's where you start to build some serious momentum. And that's ultimately where you accomplish your trading goals and your life goals.
Beautiful. So simple, yet so powerful. It's amazing. It's amazing. Pat, I think it's been amazing. I personally found a lot of value from what you said, and it's so things on a higher level. So you definitely have to put more thoughts into it as you're watching this. Take some notes, rewatch it again as well, because pretty much this is it. It's all a mental work, which takes time, right? As we spoke about balancing out everything, it takes work. Most importantly, you have to be patient and you have to have that long-term goal, right? You don't want it to happen right now because that's a fantasy. So set goals, as Pat said, aim, right? So hopefully taking note of that. Pat, once again, thank you so much. I would like to ask you, where can traders find more about you? Where they can find your services as well?
Great. Thank you first and foremost for having me on, Ilya. I really enjoy this. I always love having conversations with you as well. Yeah, I have a YouTube, and I post very consistent videos on there. And I think it's Trading Mindset YouTube channel. I think traders will get a lot of value if they go through those videos, and they implement what I prescribe in those videos. It's just my name, Pat Bailouni, and you'll be able to access that. I've also got my Instagram, which is Pat Bailouni. I don't do too much trading mindset stuff on there, but you get a look behind the scenes into my life. I probably will start doing more trading mindset stuff on there. I also have my signature program, which is the 12-week challenge. You've been through that yourself, Ilya. And when traders, are ready to get involved in that, they'll be able to find more information on my YouTube.
Exactly.
But I would suggest, if you're a trader now, you resonate with what I said in this particular interview, jump on the YouTube, subscribe to that, watch it voraciously. I've got a lot of videos backlogged, so there's a lot of content there. And I still stand by every video I've created there. So there's a lot of quality things, in my opinion, on that channel. And then follow me on Instagram. Even message me, say good day. I'd be very happy to answer questions, do all that type of stuff as well.
Beautiful. And I'm also going to link this. I'm going to put links in the description as well. I'm going to tag you as well, so they can just click and access your profile.
Appreciate that, Ilya. Thank you.
Beautiful. Okay, well, hopefully you guys enjoyed this one. I personally did. I hope you took some notes and you're actually motivated to take a step towards achieving your trading goals. And yeah, I can't wait to talk next to you again, Pat. And yeah, see you next time, guys. Bye-bye.